Yeah.
Okay.
Small talk. How do we get one of those remix neon signs? Because that's the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah. Throughout
Even
the
looking.
conference.
Yeah.
So I ran RemixConf year one, and they just like the Remix logo is just so perfect for this.
It's dope. Yeah.
And so the logistics company that I use for the conferences is called Zero Slope Events, and they run a lot of stuff. They run ngConf and ReactConf in the past and a bunch of things. And so they ran this, and they got the sign. And because I ran the conference, I was the one who got to keep it. But then the following year, for year two, they made two signs so that Ryan and Michael could get those.
Okay. I was like, there's no way you have the only remix sign. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and in fact, actually, I think the Remix team is getting all the members of the Remix team signs like this pretty soon
That's
too.
awesome.
So yeah, it is pretty cool. I need to like reorganize my office to get the sign up a little bit, but I'm actually going to be moving in the next couple months anyway. So
All right.
yeah, my background is going to be different in the future. This has kind of been iconic Kent background with that like super weird monster with googly eyes forever. But yes, it is going to be different.
Are you leaving Utah?
With it? With the
No,
kids'
we're staying close by. So I love Utah. We just are going to go somewhere that will suit our family's needs. We just had our 5th child, and
Congrats.
yeah, thank you. So we're not like scrunched in here, but this isn't our home, and so we're gonna build a home that's like ours.
There you
like,
go.
This is what we
That's
wanted.
awesome.
So
yeah,
Super
definitely want to get out to see Utah. Seems like such an awesome place.
well, I've got a good excuse for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
If we're ready to segue.
Great segue.
Yeah.
Do we want to kick it off, or what do we want to do?
Yeah, we can kick it off. I will say, so we're taking the kids to the Grand Canyon for spring break, and my parents are coming with, but they're gonna break off at the end of the week and go to Utah because they're excited about seeing some of the national parks and things like that.
Well, cool.
Yeah.
That is exciting.
Yep. Yeah, we can kick it off. So if everybody's good,
Let's
sweet.
go.
Let's go. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Compressed FM, a podcast all about web design and development with a little bit of zest. In today's episode, we have a very special guest, second time on the show, Kent C. Dodds. Welcome.
Thank you. Love being here. Excited to be on again.
Sweet. Let's kick it off with the intro.
Web development and design, who would have guessed? Well, we can do them both, even add a little zest. So turn up the volume, get ready for the best. Let's get it started in this episode of Compress.
I love that.
James isn't here, but he's in the chat, I think, lurking. So I'll introduce everybody, or myself, and we can go around the circle. Hello, my name is Amy Dutton. I am a lead maintainer on the Redwood JS core team.
Hey, I am Becca, and I am the developer experience lead at OpenSauce.
Hey, y'all. My name is Brad Garapi. I'm a front-end developer at Atlassian working on Confluence.
And as I mentioned earlier, we have a special guest with Kent.
Hello, I'm Kent C. Dodds, and I'm a full stack web developer teaching people how to do it on epicweb.dev.
Awesome. And we have a very special sponsor today with Convex. If you go to convex.dev, they are a backend service. So they are known as the backend for founders and is the application platform for product obsessed founders. We had James Cowling on the show a few weeks ago, and it was just a delight to hear from him and some of the strategy and things that he's putting into Convex. So definitely check that episode out. One of the things that was really interesting to me was he was talking about in the age of AI, you can have like generative AI where you're going to get a different response from, say, ChatGPT. Every time you run the prompt, it'll be slightly different. And so you still have a place for databases, even in the age of AI, because you do need a source of truth. of absolute
Mm.
truth. So you can make sure that you're constantly feeding it the same set of data, even if you are getting different results. And so definitely check out Convex. Like I said, convex.dev. Thanks again to Convex for being a Compressed FM sponsor. Brad, I think you have a list of questions. Like you came prepared.
I've got some. I guess I'll just kick this off by saying, welcome to the show, Kent. Like, I got to say, you've taught myself and probably countless others and all of us here so much. And even personally, just like responding on Twitter and things like that, I always really appreciate how you can reach out and drop a couple nuggets of knowledge real quick to like get me over the hump. So thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah. So we really wanted to have you on the show, and I think you were also looking for a great opportunity to come on and talk about some of the big things you've been working on. And I think honestly, that's kind of a theme.
Epic
You've
things.
yeah, you've put out some really big things in the past couple of years. Going back to, I think it was a React course, right? That you published a while back. It was gigantic.
Mhm.
I remember. But now you're working on something epic, something called Epic Web. So I guess we'll start with like the course. What is the epicweb.dev course?
Yeah, well, so in a couple of years ago, when I wrote my 2010 in review, my 2010s in review, so that decade in review blog post, it's very long. I wrote a lot about like, and that was the decade where I entered the industry. Like at the beginning of the decade, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, and then by the end, I launched Epic React. And so at the end of that blog post, I mentioned a tweet that somebody had tweeted at me and said, like, I think that you're going to one day announce some sort of KCD university or something like that. And I said, yeah, I actually literally, I've been wanting to make a kcd.edu, except like .edu domains are like, you have to be an actual university to get those. But yeah, for a long time, I've been wanting to put together like everything that I know about web development in one place. And so um, when I finished Epic React in 2020, and that was working out, I decided I needed to get back to building actual stuff because I'd been a year out of the industry at that point. I'd left PayPal to go full-time instructor. And so at that same time, Remix was created. And so I rebuilt my website using Remix. And I was blown away by what I could do. And we were just talking about the like really wild stuff that my website does. That it is, I intentionally overscoped my website for what a typical developer portfolio is all about, because I knew I wanted to build it in such a way that if I was still at PayPal, I could benefit from or I would have similar constraints. And so I wanted it globally distributed and fast wherever you are in the world, and global distributed database and authentication, all of that stuff. And so I put that together with Remix, and I realized a couple of things. First, that Remix was still pretty early for me to teach something as epic as I was planning. So like an epic Remix wasn't really ready, but also that this was the solid foundation I wanted to build stuff on. And so I talked with Ryan Florence and Michael Jackson, and they had me jump on board with them as the director of developer experience, so I could help get Remix to a point where I could produce the epic series of workshops that I was planning. And so I was with Remix for about 8 months. In that time, I ran RemixConf and a number of other initiatives like getting meetups going and helping with getting the Discord and doing some of the docs and stuff like that. And then Remix got acquired by Shopify, and I thought, okay, I did what I came here to do. Now let's go back to the full stack web development course I want to do. So that's where Epic Web came from. Was at the end of 2022, I left Remix and started working full time on what this thing would be. And so I put together. Well, this is kind of getting to be a long story, but I'll shorten it, and we can go in detail if you want.
Yeah.
But yeah, I put together a series of workshops that like getting dangerously close to the amount of information that you would expect from a boot camp or even a university degree. and that has been my goal for a long time. And now like it's expanding way beyond that. And I'd love to get into that, but I've been talking for too much. So we'll just start with that.
Yeah. I'll go back just a little bit because you mentioned that, at the time you were uh, leaving PayPal, Remix was just kind of in some of its earlier stages. And one of the things that I was thinking about, like an Epic Remix, like you were talking about, is that the Remix surface area is actually pretty small. Like, I can see how you could do a deep dive on React and the internals and how state works and all this, and how you build with React. But as far as Remix goes, there may not be enough meat and potatoes there to make as big of a course as you wanted. So, did you know at the time that you wanted to expand a whole lot more than teaching a course on a particular technology, that you wanted to do a full web course? Or was Remix the thing that kind of made you say like was that the point where you're like, "Oh, I can't teach just this. I have to go bigger."
Oh, good question. So yeah, um, I originally was planning on Epic Remix, and if you go to epicremix.dev, it actually redirects you to Epic Web.
Okay.
And so I was planning on doing something that was Remix focused,
Mhm.
um, but I realized that that wasn't epic enough for me, and I wanted to also teach something that would benefit people regardless of whether they end up using Remix in the future as
Yeah.
well. And so I realized that Remix was just one of the many tools in my tool belt as a full stack web dev. I would like Remix is just as incidental as Prisma or
Yes.
Tailwind CSS or TypeScript. It's just one of the other tools. So that's why I pivoted from Epic Remix to Epic Web, was just to broaden the usefulness, and also to like before I would teach, here's React, but then there's this whole other part of application development that we don't really touch on. This time I wanted to be like, hey, you can build the whole thing yourself and understand all the pieces, even if you don't build the whole thing yourself. And I'm going to teach you everything that you need to know to do that.
Yeah. Like, way too many React tutorials are like just the front end, just the client side, and they kind of hand wave away the rest of the entire stack that you really need to build a full application.
Mm-hmm.
So
Um,
sorry, Brad, where should somebody, at what level should somebody be to take the course? So is there understanding that's required before jumping in? And I think that you said that this essentially could replace like boot camps or other forms of tutorials. So it would be great to kind of see like what the pathway would be for someone interested in taking the course.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the area where Epic Web kind of falls short of replacing a bootcamp is the prerequisites, because I'm not going to teach somebody who, or currently we don't teach anything for people who don't know how to program at all. And that is definitely a goal in the future, is I want to take somebody who's never programmed a day in their life, but is committed to learning, and get them all the way to a full stack web developer. And so right now, the prerequisites include so I'll have to take a step back. Right now, Epic Web is the only thing you can really buy on there is a series of workshops that I produced. I think it's 5 workshops, around like 14 to 16 days worth of, like, if I were to deliver these workshops myself, it would take around 16 days to deliver them, worth of material. But of course, like there's a lot more that goes into it. We're not just, I wouldn't deliver this in just 16 straight days. But yeah, so there's that much worth of exercise material. And in the future, I plan on adding a lot more material. And I'm currently working on revamping Epic React, and that's going to all go onto Epic Web as well, the version 2 of Epic React. And so, yeah, but currently for what you can get now, you need to have experience with React. Not a lot, but definitely some experience with React. And that implies some experience with JavaScript. Also, some experience with TypeScript is useful. CSS and HTML is assumed as well. And a little bit of experience with Git, so you can like do a pull and stuff like that. So yeah, there are, and also a little bit of experience with Node as well. So if you have some like rudimentary experience with those technologies, then you should be well suited to get started in this course. Even if you are well experienced in those things, the material in the course will go deeper than you probably have gone before. And so anyway, that's where it's at right now. And we're actively adding a lot more to the platform as well.
You go really deep into like HTML standards and browser APIs and things like that. What is something that you learned while you were trying to put this content together?
Oh man, I've learned a lot. So one of the unique value propositions of Epic Web is the way that we deliver the material through what I call the workshop app. And so an important thing to me is that people practice where they practice, if that makes sense. So like when you're developing your material or working through the material, you should be in the same work environment as your actual work. And so that means like your own editor, and you're actually running terminal commands and all of that stuff. We don't do any in-browser things. And which those things are cool, but to me, I think it's valuable for you to be using the same editor development environment that you develop with. And so the workshop app itself has been an enormous learning ground for me, because it is, I actually, when I give the workshops, one of the feedback that I get from people is, I want a workshop on how you built this workshop app, because it is, it's pretty complicated, integrates tightly with your system. So it'll open up specific files, like the files you're supposed to work on. It opens that up in your editor. And like when you're going through the self-paced workshops, there'll be videos inline as you're going through things. So you're like, oh, okay, now I watch this video and now I'm going to do these exercises. There's a diff tab that'll show you the difference between what you've worked on and what the solution is. And there's real-time stuff in there too. So lots of really interesting things. So anyway, I don't know that that was quite your question, but that has been a big learning ground for me for playing around with a lot of cool and interesting things. As far like most of the stuff that I'm teaching on there, I don't typically learn something just so I can teach it. Normally, I'm teaching stuff that I practiced and learned in the process of building my own website or other things. Though there are some things that I found as I'm teaching stuff, I have to go deeper than I typically do because I want to make sure I understand all that stuff. So I would say that I understand a lot more about authentication than I did when I started, because I decided, you know what, I want to do two-factor auth in this, and I've never done that before. So I had to implement two-factor authentication as an example there too. But yeah, most of the stuff that's in there was just knowledge that was already in my head, and I wanted to teach people.
Yeah, I saw a hot take tweet where you said everybody should build their own auth.
Yeah, I think they should. So whether you do that in production at your company and that's how you do authentication or not, that's gonna, there are arguments to be had for that, but you definitely should build it yourself so that you know what those auth services are doing. And so I would say, like, once you've done that, you'll realize, oh, we actually this is pretty good for what we need, and I don't want to spend all this money and worry about data migrations and stuff by using a third-party service. So yeah, you should build your own auth.
There's a couple of Redwood startups that have found themselves in a hard position where they've leaned on a service. There's nothing against the service. It served them very well. But then all of a sudden they've grown and they have tons of users and they're like, we can't afford this service anymore. And then trying to migrate all of that data securely is an interesting problem.
Yep. Yeah. So if you do use a service, I strongly advise against storing any of your user data in that service. Your user table should be in your own database, because yeah, those services are very expensive. They're just they charge per user, and so you've got to they're eating into your user margin. It's not good
for sure. So you touched a little bit on the workshop app. What stack are you using with that? Because
yeah, I'm using
Those
the
are
Epic
questions
stack.
we love to talk about.
Yeah. So the stack I'm using is the Epic stack, with some pretty like significant differences. So we don't really have a database, like we sort of do for when you're authenticated. We authenticate your device, not the browser, because you're running in localhost, and yeah, so it makes more sense to authenticate the device, which poses some interesting challenges and stuff. And we have like some preferences that you're setting and stuff. I literally store that in JSON files in your home directory in a dot file in there, or a dot folder. And yeah, like because we are not deploying to a real production environment, some things are a little bit different. But for like anybody who has used the Epic stack before, they'll be pretty comfortable. So lots of people listening probably haven't heard of the Epic stack. So the Epic stack is Remix and Tailwind, TypeScript, Playwright, deploys to fly.io, uses SQLite as the database, and LightFS to make that distributed. Yeah, like tons of other things, Vite, Vitest, yeah, lots of really cool pieces of tech all wired together, even all the way down to two-factor authentication, homegrown authentication, and all of that code is yours. Once you bootstrap a new app, you have full control and you can change whatever you want. And it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that seems to be the new gold standard now, isn't it's not like we're going to hand you a package and it's a black box, like Shad CN and a bunch of other things are saying, here's the source code. It's yours. Do whatever you want with it. It's
Yes.
mostly just like a starting point.
Yeah.
Of course, the
I think
downside
that's
there is like drift, right? Like if there's improvements made to it later, you're kind of missing out on those.
Yeah, so there are trade-offs for that reason. And so the pieces that can be abstracted away into a package are, and so like there have been a number of things that were built into the Epic stack that like I gave you as code that I've later turned into packages, and then I update the Epic stack to use those. And the cool thing is you can just watch the commits and like, oh, he made this change. It's almost like when you use the Epic stack, it's like hiring me to be on your team. And so I'm not going to commit directly to your project, but you can see what I did and then follow my path. And on top of that, the Epic stack has decision documents, so you can see like why did he choose Prisma, or like why are we deploying on Fly with LightFS and SQLite and all this. Um, and so actually, I say, why did he choose Prisma? That's one of the decision documents I haven't written yet, but I should, and I will eventually. But yeah, having decision documents like why did he make this change is super, super valuable. Like imagine having a senior engineer on your team that is like gone through this and done this, and having them giving you that type of documentation on big and important decisions, and also like guiding you as you like updates need to happen to your project. Like that's pretty valuable. So there are trade-offs because now, yes, it's your code, but over time, the things that can be abstracted away are getting abstracted away.
Yeah, I've leveraged some of those exact decision documents to convince my team at work, why we should use particular things or make particular decisions. And they've been really helpful. It's just like a starting point where it's like somebody's done this research already. Take a look, and then we'll have a discussion. But like the discussion doesn't last very long because it's already been discussed.
It is really helpful, and I'm glad to hear that that's been helpful to you. It's just so nice to have a well thought out document that addresses all the concerns that people are going to bring up. And this is a practice that I would recommend people do in their own projects. Is just write down the decisions, and when you're going to go up to your team and say, "Hey, I want to do this thing." I would recommend going to your team members beforehand, each individually, one-on-one, so you can find out what all their concerns are going to be. And so then when the meeting shows up and you're all together, they don't like band together with all their concerns, but you can hit all their concerns before they even bring them up.
I love
Do you
that. And I
have
think oh, I was just going to say, I think that's great for learners as well, right? Because when you're learning, if I went to boot camp, I'm a boot camp grad, but you often don't I think one of the shortcomings is you don't go into depth about making those kind of decisions because all of the decisions are made for you. So you're just like, this is the answer, but you
Mm-hmm.
don't stop and think. And that's kind of like becomes a challenge when you're trying to level up or move on to the next level, is that you just don't have that depth of knowledge. But even practicing at that learning space, and you might not have teammates, but you probably have a community of people. Like, what would your concerns be if I use this technology with this technology? And that's a really great place to start and kind of get into the practice of that too.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to ask, do you have a piece of technology that you changed your mind on?
Oh yeah. Let's see. So I should actually look at the decision documents because I know that I have changed a couple of things. There was uh, okay, so there were a couple of these that were changing. Um, not like a huge technology, but an approach that we were taking. So one example that's pretty recent is there's a decision doc titled "Remove CSRF." That's cross-site request forgery tokens, and like 3 documents before that is adding CSRF. And so yeah, there are definitely learnings and having those documents to kind of track those over time can be really helpful. And another thing that the Epic Stack uses is ShadCN and Radix. And I am in the process of kind of thinking about switching to Draft UI with React Aria, which is kind of a similar thing, but React Aria potentially has some better accessibility aspects to it. It's not super high priority because Radix is pretty dang good, and so I don't mind so much. But yeah, like I am definitely looking and considering things. And another thing is, Prisma. A lot of people like Prisma. I love Prisma. I think it's awesome. But a lot of people are interested in Drizzle, and so and Keasley, however you say that one. And so. I am like keeping my eyes open for that. Another one is we're deploying on Fly.io with LiteFS and SQLite, but there's also Terso that's running on SQLite that can run it embedded. And LiteFS is awesome, but it does it is a little bit complicated. Where there are a couple of things that are a little bit complicated about it, and Terso kind of simplifies some of those things. But another thing that the Epic Stack has is guiding principles, and you can find that in the docs. But one of the guiding principles is reducing the number of vendors that you're using and the number of services that you have yourself. And so I'm always having to balance these guiding principles with themselves. I want to make sure that it's easy for people to use and solves real problems for people. But that we don't introduce new problems by adding a bunch of different services and things. So I am definitely evaluating and thinking about things on a regular basis on the Epic Stack. And people just keep an eye out on the decision docs and announcements and make the changes that they want to. And maybe I make a change that they don't want. And that's the cool thing about them having ownership over the code, is if they don't like my decision, then they can do whatever they want.
So I guess let's kind of start pivoting from the course into like the next steps. So you're building Epic Web. It's going good. You've got workshops going on. What made you want to take this next big step into dreaming up your own conference?
Yeah, well, so the conference was actually kind of easy to decide to do because when I left Remix, or let's back it up a little further. When we did Remix Conf year 1, this was 6 months after open sourcing, and we sold out sponsors and had a ton of over 300 attendees. It was an awesome event, super, super cool. And this is like, for a lot of people, was their first event after COVID. And so like I was blown away by how good of a reception we were getting. And so leading up to the conference, I said, hey, we should announce the next year at this conference. And so we planned it. We got a couple sponsors to agree to sponsor the following year. And so at the conference we announced it, and then the next day Ryan and Michael come to me and say, hey, so Shopify has been thinking about buying Remix, and let's talk about this. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, so we'd already committed to year 2, and I left before before year 2 showed up, but Shopify didn't want to have any of the Remix team working on RemixConf, and so they contracted me to run RemixConf year 2. And they were like, no, we're not going to announce year 3. We're going to figure out what we want to do with RemixConf. Well, turns out that they didn't want to do RemixConf anymore. They just didn't have the resources or the priority for them, which is disappointing, but it's fine. And so I said, well, I want to keep running a conference. I've got a really great logistics team that handles all of the really the stuff I don't want to do. And so when I launched Epic Web, I said, I think I could probably make a conference for Epic Web. And it's not just come and learn everything that you can learn on Epic Web at this conference. It's like the web is epic. And I think that it would be really cool if we brought a bunch of really awesome people together to talk about how great the web is and the cool things that are going on. So yeah, so the leap to a conference wasn't terribly difficult, but I will say that year 2 of RemixConf was way more challenging than year 1. 2023 was a very, very hard year for all conferences. Sponsors were dropping. Like most or a couple of the sponsors that I had committed in 2022 had to drop out for 2023, and so it was very difficult. And luckily, Remix was owned by Shopify by that point, and so they just picked up the bill. But I could not pick up the bill for Epic Web Conf. Like, I am an individual. I'm not a multi-billion-dollar company. And so I did reach out to a bunch of sponsors ahead of time and say, hey, would you be interested in sponsoring? I'm not sure I'm going to do it, but like, would you be interested? So it was kind of a big decision, but I've done it before. And I know that I can have success doing this. And like, if you just look at the lineup of speakers we have at Epic Web Conf, it is pretty dang good. We've got some really, really awesome people coming to Utah for this. So I'm super stoked to have all these people coming to the conference, and I hope that everybody else comes too.
Yeah, the speaker lineup is ridiculous, and you really cover the gamut of topics. Is there like a kind of like a guiding principle for Epic Web Conf? Because it covers a lot of stuff. Is there anything that it doesn't cover, or is there anything that the conference isn't about, and then at the same time, like, what is it about? So web is a
Yeah.
big place.
Yeah. So originally my thought with Epic Web Conf no, it still is this. I want to give people with all of Epic Web, my goal is to give people a curated experience where the advice that they're given does not conflict with each other, right? So like I don't want epicweb.dev to turn into something like egghead.io, where you've got Egghead is great, but you've got just a bunch of different instructors who are all giving their own advice, and that's very helpful. And some things connect with people, and other things connect with other people. But Epic Web is not going to teach you Next.js, for example. I'm not going to put that on there because I teach you Remix, and you would not use those two things together unless you're migrating from one to the other. And so it's confusing, and I'm just going to teach you one way that will work for like 99% of the time. And I'm not going to make you feel like you have to now make a choice about which is which. And so Epic Web Conf is the same. I wanted to bring people together who have a common vision for the web. Now, like, we're not all exactly the same. We don't build everything exactly the same, but the topics that we're sharing don't conflict with each other. And you can use all of the things that we're going to be sharing on that stage in a way that addresses whatever needs you have for the web. That doesn't conflict with each other. So yeah, I handpicked all of the people who are on that stage. I didn't do a CFP. I think I'll do a CFP in the future because it's like people come out of the woodwork that you might not have known. But yeah, so I picked all of these people. I knew that they were going to be the type of people I want on the stage. I didn't get everybody I wanted, but I did get a lot of really awesome people. And so, yeah, like I said, there's probably not going to be anything about other frameworks on that stage, because that is that like we're going to be consistent. It is not a Remix conference; it's a Epic Web conference, but Remix is a big part of Epic Web. But also at the same time, it's not Remix exclusive. So if you're building a Redwood app, you can definitely learn from what Una is going to be talking about with what's coming down the pipe with web platform standards and stuff. Or like if you're even not building a web app, you can learn a lot from what Scott Hanselman has to share about AI taking our jobs and like what we're going to do to use AI effectively. And so that's kind of the goal, is to have a broad appeal for web developers. And also a consistent message.
That's awesome.
I think
Because I mean,
that's
re- oh, oh,
go ahead.
regardless of what technology you use, regardless of whether you go Remix or Redwood or Next, it's not going to look today the same as it does tomorrow. And so if you have those guiding principles to say, like, these things are the things that don't change, or how you make these decisions, or the browser APIs, these are the things that we all lean on and that we can all agree on regardless of what framework.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Brad, go ahead.
No worries. Yeah. I think it's so understated to have like a cohesive vision for all the speakers. And it kind of gives me like Laracon vibes a little bit, where like not necessarily that it's anchored to a particular technology or framework, but in a sense it kind of is. But really what it's doing is it's giving you like, this is the conference's methodology for building on the web, and everything that you're going to hear today is in support of that. And so I actually think that enhances the learning experience, because when you leave, you do kind of have one track to follow.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if it's a polyglot conference with multiple different languages or technologies, you leave and your brain is getting pulled in 18 different directions of things that you have to research when you get back home, and you have to learn. And sometimes it's almost overwhelming, because you leave a conference and you're like, wow, I don't know so much. Whereas maybe if you come to Epic Web Conf, you actually advance your knowledge, because everything you've been hearing about is pushing you towards kind of like one goal, one end goal with a good vision.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can come back and look at, let's say, the Epic Stack source code and say like, everything is reinforced here. And so it's kind of like this really nice circle of, I learned something at the conference, and now I can go back and have a reference implementation and keep advancing my knowledge and proficiency further.
Mm-hmm.
I think that also the approach that you're using kind of curates the audience that's coming to the conference, right?
Mm-hmm.
And by doing that, I think that it's more likely to create an intimate community of people that are willing to have good conversations and to make connections and to go beyond that. So in some ways, I think it goes a long way to continuing the conference with the growth that you see in the community.
Yeah, like we're like-minded developers who are doing similar things to each other. And while like you want to avoid stagnation, and like we want to keep our head up out of the ground, like I was talking about earlier, I think that there's a lot to be said for consistency, and especially when there are so many ways to solve the problem, and all of them will probably work out just fine. There's a lot to be said for just choosing one and sticking with it, and seeing how far you can take that one solution. Because that's the entire premise of the Epic Stack is, I've made all these decisions for you. I don't know what your app is, like what you're planning on building, but I'm pretty sure it's gonna, like, all of these decisions will apply to your app. I'm like 80% confident that you're not gonna have to change much at all from the decisions that we've made in this app. And so Epic Web is all about that as well, and the conference is about that too. So
I feel like you're practicing three distinct skill sets here, right? Like you have coding, you have teaching, and you have conference organization. And those are all very different things. So like number one, do you sleep? And number two, like what are the biggest
Right.
pains in doing all of the things?
I missed the last question that you asked.
What are the biggest pain points in being
points.
able to do all of the things?
So my something that I found in myself is that by making commitments, I'm pretty good at keeping my commitments. And so I do protect my commitments pretty closely. I'm not going to commit to something I'm not going to do. But by committing to things, I make myself do things. And so by scheduling the conference, well, okay, now I just gotta make myself do that. I'm in the middle of giving a 5-week, 10-day workshop series right now. I gave the second workshop yesterday, and not all of the workshops were totally done. I'm like still writing instructions and stuff, but I'm making myself do that because people actually gave me money. I've got to make sure that this happens. And so a lot of this doesn't really have skill transfer. Like talking to sponsors and convincing them to sponsor an event is nothing like, figuring out what the browser bug is. But we're all multifaceted people. I also write a one wheel and I can do that well. And so each one of these things doesn't necessarily feed into each other, but they're aspects or activities that I actually enjoy participating in. I like convincing people and getting people excited about something I'm excited about. And I like the problem solving, and I can do both.
You also write science fiction, right? You're a novelist?
Yes, I have written some. It was epic fantasy, which is appropriate, I think.
I love it.
But yeah, so that is something that I have put on the back burner for the last couple of years. But yes, I do have a book, and I'm in the middle of editing it. But if anybody wants to go to kcd.im/Sherlan, then you will find my first novel. My second one, I think, is linked from that. And that second one was never finished. But the first one's I'm in the middle of a big edit. And you'll get to a point in the story where I have stopped my editing, and it will start getting very confusing at that point. I'm looking forward to actually finishing that in the future, though.
Okay, linking that up in chat now. Cool.
Mhm.
Also, I want to dig into the one wheel stuff for a second because I've got my red one. Oh, you totally can't see it. My name's blocking. It's right there.
Oh, cool.
What model do you ride? And like a small one, a big one?
Yeah. So I have actually owned every one wheel except for the original one wheel. So I got
Okay.
the Plus XR was my first one years ago. Dave Geddes inspired me after React Rally years ago. He let me ride his Pint, and I was hooked from there. So I got my Plus XR, and then I wanted to travel with my one wheel, but traveling with a battery that size just doesn't work. The planes don't like that. And so you can travel with a Pint. The battery is the right size. But I got the Pint X, which has a bigger battery, and I didn't realize that battery was too big. So I sold that to my neighbor and then got a Pint. And then the GT came out, and I couldn't help myself. So I got a GT. And then the GTS series came out recently, and I was like, that looks amazing, but I can't justify. I can't have 4 one wheels. And so then they came out with the trade-in program, which I think we have like 1 week left on that. And I traded in my Plus XR for one wheel GTS series, and
Nice.
Holy smokes, that thing is amazing. It is nuts. I went up this hill that I've tried to go up that hill on all of my one wheels, and none of them could do it. I was always picking up my one wheel to take it up. It's this dirt trail with a bunch of rocks and stuff. I nailed that thing. That GTS series just zoomed right up that thing. It was amazing. So yeah, I'm loving this one wheel.
Yeah, I feel like where you're at, you need those bigger boards with more power and the treaded tires just to get around the trails. That little Pint X won't handle any of that stuff.
No. Yeah, the Pine X is good for I carry it on the plane, put it in in the overhead bin, and it is a real pain to travel with. But I've ridden that one wheel on the beaches of Miami Beach. That is amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is cool.
Have you gotten any of your kids on one?
Yes. So I've taken a couple of my kids out on one wheel rides, and we have a good time. They're not quite old enough. Some of them aren't heavy enough to engage the one wheel to get it going. So yeah, but I'm looking forward in the future to go on one wheel rides with them.
I was gonna say, if you have 4 wheels and 5 kids, everybody gets
Yeah.
one.
Maybe I'll be getting more in the future.
Yeah, I just hit the point where my kids can ride bikes now, and so it's like I'm on the one wheel, they're on the bikes. We're going around the neighborhood. It's like so much fun.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah,
perfect.
we do that a lot. One thing, if it's okay if I change the direction of the conversation a little bit, one thing I wanted to talk about was what I'm doing with Epic Web Dev in the future.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
Yes, please.
and so, like I mentioned, my ultimate goal is I want to get somebody from I have no knowledge of programming all the way to full stack developer, and that beginner material will always be free. I don't want to make money off of people's hopes and dreams. Like if you don't know how to program and you are thinking, oh, maybe I want to program, I don't want to take your money. And so eventually we're going to have something like that. But because it's free, it's kind of hard to justify working on that right up until like we have some good recurring income coming in. So that's why we don't have that yet, but that will be in the future. But the other thing that I decided to do a couple of months ago, that was a really big decision for me, was to onboard other instructors. So to have more people than just me on Epic Web. And this is difficult because in part, I want to make sure that it's a curated experience. And so I can only bring instructors on who are cool with me having a little bit of a hand in what they end up instructing, because we need to make sure that it's a consistent message and everything. But yeah, I decided to do that, and it has been awesome. So we have Simon Rakolotis, I think is how you say his name. But he's the Tailwind guy. Like everybody who has learned Tailwind has watched one of his videos. And he just gave his first workshop yesterday to a bunch of people. It was awesome. And then, unfortunately, Artem, I also don't know how to say his name quite right. It's Zakharenchenko, I think. But Artem, he's the creator of MSW, also gave a testing workshop. He's actually going to be revamping testingjavascript.com and putting that on Epic Web. And so, yeah, we've got both of them who've both given workshops and are turning those into self-paced workshops that'll be on Epic Web. And then this is a bit of a surprise, but Michael Chantastic is going to be producing stuff on Epic Web. We have a Git
That's
course
awesome.
from him coming really soon. Also, another one I haven't mentioned yet, but Shonday Person is going to be producing
Yes.
TypeScript material on Epic Web as well. And I've got a couple other people who are considering producing some stuff on the site. But this is something I'm really excited about because it means that we can produce more and varied content for people. Like people need to learn how to use Git. So Chantastic working on Git content is really valuable. People need to learn how to use TypeScript. Like I right now, I kind of assume that you have some TypeScript experience, but not everybody does. And so having that material on there. And I don't have time to revamp testing JavaScript. I'm revamping Epic React right now. And so having Artem, and Artem is like super smart with the testing stuff. And then of course the Tailwind stuff. I don't think that I could teach it as well as Simon could. And so having him on board as well. So anyway, Epic Web is turning into something that's truly epic. And I hope that people keep an eye on it because we've got a lot of cool stuff coming.
I
Yep.
know that you've done a lot of stuff with Egghead, and they are very intentional about like their education flow and the path that somebody goes on. Do you think about that? Are you like for the instructors, are you walking through a similar like path with them? Like what models have you found that work for you?
Yeah, you mean for the instructors or for the learners?
Like, so kind of both. So I started down the path of talking to them about content. And I think that Joel and his team do a fantastic job of saying, in general, this is how people learn. And a lot of times when you're watching YouTube videos, there's a bunch of fluff added in. And so they're very like, make it as succinct as possible. Get to the point. We want like 2-minute videos so people can find what they want. What is it that you're trying to communicate? And they do a fantastic job of really trying to hone that in. And I've found that a lot of times you kind of use a similar methodology. Like Joel's written on, I think his site, Badassery, about his process with Matt Pocock and talking about like run workshops first, validate the idea, work through the material, make sure that you are really good about how you're guiding people, what questions they're asking and doing all these things, and then go on to create the material, then record the courses or the exercises and things like that. So I was just curious if you had like a similar success strategy or checklist or whatever that you use to develop content.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the instructors, I am their mentor as they come into things, and because I have a bit of an opinion on how things are taught and what is taught, I'm like very close to helping guide them in the way that they're producing their stuff. Joel and I came to these kind of decisions on how to put this stuff together. Like I've been teaching on Egghead. That was the first platform I started teaching on, and I was like instructor number 12 on Egghead years and years ago, and Joel and I kind of developed these opinions and these practices for over the last couple of years of how to effectively develop the material. So yes, we absolutely validate the material with the like you actually produce some free content and see if anybody is interested in those things, and then you turn some of that into workshops, and once people start putting up money, then okay, like people are actually interested in this, and then those workshops turn into self-paced workshops. And the workshop app, it very much facilitates the type of teaching that I want happening on Epic Web. And so, yeah, it's a very guided process for each of these instructors, and I have to be very thoughtful about who I decide to start producing this material, because yeah, it's a pretty big investment on my end to like review their articles, review their material, all of that stuff, to make sure that it is at the level of quality. But having people or the instructors deliver the workshops ahead of time is really, really great practice for validating the material.
Mm-hmm. Brad, do you have more questions, or do you want to go in? I mean, Becca could have more questions too. I just know Brad had a list beforehand.
I think I've got one more question.
Okay.
So going back to Epic Web Conference, it's being hosted in Park City, Utah. Talk about why you picked the location, what makes it awesome. It's a place I would definitely love to visit. Seems gorgeous out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So RemixConf was in Salt Lake City 2 years in a row because I live here, and so does my logistics company, the Zero Slope events. They live here as well, and one of my favorite conferences ever is React Rally. They just do a fabulous job over the years, and Zero Slope has run those. And so I just told Zero Slope, hey, listen, we're going to do a conference about Remix, but I basically want it to be React Rally, just about Remix. And so we ran the conference in a very similar fashion, same location. And so when I'm doing Epic Web, I love Utah, and I just want more people to be here and to experience this beautiful place, and like at the foot of the mountains, and it's just awesome. So yeah, so we decided to go with Park City, actually, mostly because of scheduling conflicts and stuff with ReactConf and React Miami and a couple other conferences we didn't want to step on. And so we actually originally we were planning on Salt Lake City, and then we found out that there is a big volleyball convention, like high school girl volleyball convention or something going on in Salt Lake. So if we did it in Salt Lake, there'd be like so many parents and high school girls all over the city, and like that's great, but I also want a table at the restaurant, right? So and a good hotel. So we ended up going with Park City, and actually I just saw React Rally is also going to be in Park City this year, and so it's like a 40-minute Uber ride or card share thing from the airport to Park City. It's not very far at all. And it's beautiful. The location has free transport throughout the city. It's got a beautiful downtown, like really quaint, cool, fun little shops and stuff. And then there's lots of really good activity up in the mountains. We'll probably have snow, and so the day after, it's snow in the mountains, probably not snow down where we're going to be. But like the day after the conference, a bunch of us are going up skiing and snowboarding, which will be super fun. And if you want to go hiking, there's probably going to be areas that are not covered in snow that you can go hiking as well. So yeah, it's a beautiful area. I want more people to know about it because it is just fantastic.
Beautiful. Like, what a breath of fresh air from like every other tech conference in San Francisco or whatever. Breath of fresh air, like literally. So
Yeah.
that's awesome. Pick some plugs.
Yeah, second. We can move into the next segment, which is picks and plugs, where we pick something that we like and plug something else or generally something we've done or whatever. Sometimes I feel like picks and plugs are the same thing, but pick is usually something that we bought or something else. Plug is something usually more personal, but it could be 2 picks or 2 plugs.
Sounds
Does
good.
somebody want to go first?
I guess I've got something quick and
James in the
easy.
chat. Amy's really selling it. Go for it, Brad.
I got something easy. My favorite pair of sunglasses ever are Ray-Ban Wayfarers. I think they're super classy. They actually do really well for like UV protection. And so I'll give those a link and a shout out because honestly, they're my favorite. Wear them like every day. I also have very light eyes, so I feel like I need to wear sunglasses every day. It could be cloudy, doesn't matter. I'm like squinting.
For us, if you go through the drive-through at Dunkin' Donuts at night, I don't know what it is, but their sign is blinding. I put on sunglasses to read the menu.
Dang.
What about a plug or a second pick?
Twitter. Find me on Twitter. I always love talking to everybody. That's how I meet most people in web development is on Twitter. So you can find me at twitter.com/BradGarrettB.
Awesome.
I
Becca,
can
do you
go
have one?
next unless
go
Becca.
for it, Kent. Go for it. I'm
Yeah,
just
you can go,
messing
Kent. It's
everybody
fine.
up.
Okay, so my pick is Brandon Sanderson. Just everything that he writes is gold. It's amazing. And he's actually like he lives a mile and a half away from me, actually.
What?
Super cool. And I had him sign my laptop once, and it wore off. but yeah, super cool. Really, really amazing epic fantasy books. Also, lots of really good sci-fi, and he's extremely versatile and very prolific. I don't know of any author that is as popular who is as prolific as he is. And he actually holds the record for the most money made in a Kickstarter and a backer kit. He's actually running a backer kit right now that is at $16 million backed, and his Kickstarter was at like 42 million. Just people love his stuff. I love his stuff. It's amazing. So Brandon Sanderson for sure is my pick. And then my plug is going to be Epic WebConf. I want people there. epicweb.dev/conf, April 11th in Park City, Utah. It's going to be awesome. If nothing else, you should at least go to the site and subscribe to the YouTube because we're going to live stream. And that will be free. So enjoy these amazing speakers. But the only way to rub shoulders with these people is to come. So I want you to come.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Sorry, Becca.
Yeah, sure.
Are you like a Mistborn series?
Yes,
Or
that's
just,
where
like,
I got my
anything?
start with Brandon Sanderson. I've read all of his
Okay.
books now, but multiple times. But
Well, and I didn't realize his involvement with the Wheel of Time.
yeah.
So-
Okay, so I haven't read all of his books. I never got.
Okay.
I started through A Wheel of Time, and I got to like book 3, and I just like I can't do this anymore. I just it didn't capture me like his books did, and so
Mhm.
I can't just like read the books where he finishes that series because
Yeah.
I need to get to where he gets to. So yes, I haven't read all of his books, but I've read
Okay.
almost all of his books multiple times.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, sorry, Becca.
No, that's okay. My oldest watched a bunch of Brandon Sanderson's videos on world building.
Oh,
And
yeah.
he loved it, learned so much from it, and now has like an entire fantastic world built in his head. So
Yeah. So I also watched those when I was writing my book. And so yeah, my book is very Brandon Sanderson inspired, for sure.
Yeah. I'll go. So I'm gonna go with my desk snack. So if y'all have snacks on your desks, this is my go-to, which is new Primal Buffalo Chicken Stick. So if you're looking for a new healthy snack, there you go. And my plug is gonna be, so we're at Open Sauce launching a new feature on Tuesday, and so just that's my plug. If you're around on Tuesday, follow us on Twitter. We're sauced open over there, but opensauced.pizza everywhere else.
Very cool. So I'm going to pick a book called The Artist's Way. It's a very old book. Okay, good. See a nod. So this is like their 30th anniversary edition. Somebody recommended it to me. And I would say, even if you don't consider yourself like an artist, it's been so great just reading through it. So the way that it's set up is it's like you read a chapter a week, and there's 12 weeks that you go through it, but there's different things and exercises that gets you to do to think about stuff differently. So one of the things it talks about is like writing long form journal pages every day, which I used to do a long time ago, but over the last 10 years with kids and everything else, I've not done. But I've been really diligent and committed to it the last 2 weeks. And I've just been amazed by the amount of clarity that it gives me, the ideas that I've had, the way that I've been able to think through and process stuff has been incredibly helpful. But there's other things like questions that it asks in terms of like, what are blocking you? What are things that you aspire to do? And so it's just been really good for me over the last 2 weeks to reflect on that. So I would say The Artist's Way. Becca, have you read it or worked through it?
Yeah, I have, but it's been a while.
Yeah. It's like, I was surprised that it's been around so long. So that's, like I said, this is the 30th anniversary edition that I'm reading. And then I'll plug, what am I going to plug? Oh, so I have been doing the 2-week builds, and I'll include a link. But that's been really fun. You can go ahead and go to the website. You can still, I was going to close it off and I haven't closed it off yet. But I'll probably run it again in April. But I'm working with a group of people. We're all doing individual projects. The rules are really open-ended. You just pick something that you want to build and you build it in 2 weeks. And so it's been really fun to see people post their updates. It's been a good, healthy challenge for me to push through and have something to ship on March 14th. So anyways, come join us. There's a Discord where people are sharing the progress they're making. So it's been fun.
I love that idea. I think that's awesome.
Sweet. Well, Kent, thanks again for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you. I really appreciate you giving me some of your time, and hope that it was helpful for people listening.
Awesome. If you are listening to the audio version of the podcast, please leave a rating and review in your podcatcher of choice. This just helps other people be able to find the show. And until then, that's all we got.
Bye, everyone.
All right. Bye. I'm just going to go ahead and end the stream. Quick and abrupt.